Hey guys, my name is Matsumiyo, and welcome to episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Elliot, and it is, what are your thoughts on Ubisoft fixing dropshotting in Siege on the technical test servers? Well, I will say that it is a huge step in the right direction. If you're not aware of what Elliot is referring to, right now Ubisoft is currently trying to nerf the power of dropshotting. On the technical test servers, if you are standing up and then you aim down sights, as soon as you go prone, your character will un-ADS, and then you're going to have to hip fire to take anyone out while you're going towards the ground. As soon as you go prone, though, you can re-aim down sight and have that accuracy, but for that brief window from going standing up down to prone, your character is going to have to hip fire. And so by requiring the player to un-aim down sight for that split seconds, you get everything else associated with dropshotting, like you're still going to make yourself a smaller target, it's still going to be hard for the person to probably track you, especially if you're really up close and personal, but you are going to have that hipfire accuracy, and you're not going to be able to land headshots as consistently as you would before. It's going to dramatically reduce how good it is in a lot of those situations. Now, the one thing I am a bit concerned about, though, is that a lot of times, as I just mentioned, dropshotting is really good when you're up close. The further away someone is, the less effective that tactic is. You usually want to be right next to the enemy to get the most out of dropshotting. The reason why I mention this is that a lot of the defender weapons have amazing hipfire accuracy. Yeah, it's still not going to be as precise as if you were ADS'd, but it's still going to get the job done up close and personal, which is where dropshotting is the most effective. And so I kind of wish that Ubisoft went a little bit further with these changes. If we look on over at Battlefield, for example, the way that they removed dropshotting entirely from that franchise is that not only when you go prone, you un-ADS, but also you can't fire your weapon while you're going through that animation. Now, I realize that this is a lot more controversial. This takes a lot of control away from the players, and I realize why a lot of you may not even want a mechanic like that introduced into Rainbow Six Siege. Yes, you might want to see dropshotting nerfed, but also you don't want to have all the control taken away from a player. Like, I get that stance entirely. For me, though, I just despise this mechanic. When I first started to see dropshotting popping up, it just felt like it went against the spirit of what Rainbow Six Siege is all about. And so at least for me personally, I'd rather them not just go halfway with it, but just go all in and just remove the mechanic entirely. But I understand why people wouldn't want that. All in all, though, I am ecstatic about these changes. Yes, they may not be removing the mechanic entirely, but I can live with that because people are now going to have to think about it a little bit more if they do want to drop shot. In most situations, especially in offense, it may not be a viable tactic anymore. Unless you're right next to the enemy, which doesn't always happen, it is going to be a severe hindrance for you to drop towards the ground. And like I said, I think that is going to be a good thing for Rainbow Six Siege. But of course, that is just my 2 cents. The next question comes from Rand, and it is, what are your thoughts on Far Cry 5? I have loved my time with Far Cry 5. It really seems like Ubisoft took the criticisms from past games, took the things that everyone loved about them, expanded upon it, and just created an amazing open world sandbox game. I think what I've enjoyed most about the game so far is the sense of exploration and the crazy amount of tools that they give you to tackle these missions. In past Far Cry games, because there was a mini-map, I never really felt like I was exploring. I would find what I wanted on the mini-map, I would beeline straight towards that icon, and there were a lot of icons telling you what you could do, and then I would complete that mission. Because of that, I never really felt like I was exploring. I was just going from icon to icon. There was never this sense of discovery. In Far Cry 5, though, they removed that mini-map, and they've also gotten rid of a lot of the icons on the map as well. It's really fun to stumble across a cabin and try to figure out what happened there. A lot of times I would be walking down the road, I would notice that someone was taken prisoner, I would take out the lunatic, and then the prisoner would be like, hey, old man John by the river, he had a secret stash, maybe you should go check it out. Lo and behold, when you make your way on over to the river, he did have a little puzzle that you would need to unravel, and then you would get that reward. It was really satisfying to go through that loop. And while from the outside looking in, it's still like the same game. Like, they just got rid of the mini-map, they got rid of all of the amounts of icons, but just that subtle detail has made the sense of exploration, and really just the detail on the map itself, a lot more enjoyable. The other thing I really appreciate is the insane amount of customization and the ways that you're able to tackle these missions. You want to drop in from a parachute and rocket the first person you see from the sky, you have every ability to do so. You literally want to use your plane, ram it into the ground, have it set off a massive amount of explosions and take out like 10 of the enemy. That's also a possibility. Far Cry has always been known for its variety, but the tools that they give you just expand upon that and make it even more enjoyable. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that it's a perfect game. One thing that I was a bit disappointed by was the unit variety. There isn't a lot of variance between all of the units. The difficulty also leaves something to be desired. I was playing on the hardest difficulty, and I never really felt challenged. Like, there was never really a moment where I was like, wow, this is really difficult. Sure, there was some times where I got down to low health. You know, of course, I died every once in a while, but I never really felt that was because the game was challenging me. It was mainly because I was just doing something stupid. The story definitely wasn't a masterpiece. It kept me interested, like I was intrigued as to what was going on, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And then there was the ending. The ending was interesting to say the least. One part of me enjoyed it, but another part of me was really disappointed. And I can also see why a lot of people didn't like it. I don't want to spoil anything because I still highly recommend you check out Far Cry 5 if you're interested. But that ending was definitely something I was not expecting. And so all in all, I have really enjoyed my time with Far Cry 5. I might do a full review in the future to kind of maybe go more in depth for the reasons why I love it. But just in general, it has been an absolute blast. It seems like Ubisoft really took what people loved about the past games, learned from their lessons and their mistakes, and just created a really fun game. The next question is, considering this game has no story and that they always change the style of play, do you think that Rainbow Six Siege will ever have some sort of sequel? I would be very surprised if we ever saw a Siege 2. Some of you might be thinking right now, well, wait a second, Rainbow Six Siege is more popular than it's ever been before. Why wouldn't Ubisoft want to capitalize that in the next couple of years? The game has more people playing than there were at launch. That never happens for a multiplayer game. Why would they never want to expand upon that? Well, the question I have for you then is, what would even a sequel look like? Would it be all of the base maps, but upgraded in a new engine so that everything looks better graphically? Would it be the base operators? Would they have to create, 20 new base operators and start over from scratch? Would they need to bring in all of the operators that they've had in the original Siege on over and update them in their new engine? Would it have a campaign? I'm just having a hard time seeing how they're going to justify or convince people to buy a new Rainbow Six Siege when we already have a game that's doing really, really well. Especially considering that they want to get to 50 to 100 new operators, like they want to really expand the operator roster in the next couple of years. Well, what if they then say, hey, come play Rainbow Six Siege 2? It's only got 20 operators and way less content. Like, why in the world would anyone want to do that? And so the only way that I could ever see this really happening is if it was in name alone. Maybe in 5 years, we have the new Xbox and PlayStation 4. Ubisoft wants to take advantage of that new hardware, and so they do a graphical update across the board for every single one of their platforms, or at least for those new platforms. So it's still the same game, but they call it, Siege 2 because of those advancements. Maybe at that point, too, they add in a single player. They've been working on it for the last 5 years. Hey, we have this new single player, jump on in for the very first time. We have a new graphical update. We got this awesome multiplayer to go along with it. It's the best time to jump on into Rainbow Six Siege. That is also a possibility. And so all in all, it's for those very reasons why I just don't see this happening, at least in the conventional sense. Who knows, maybe the next 5 years I'm wrong and they have something up their sleeve, but the way that they've handled things so far, I would be very, very surprised. The next question comes from Trenton, and it is, what about a defensive operator that has a gadget similar to Ying but clears the smoke for the defense? Drawback is that it will suck up all the smoke within range, including Smoke's gadgets. So for the longest time, I've been wanting to have another operator that was similar to Jaeger, that was able to deal with a wide variety of gadgets that were thrown onto the objective. The thing is, though, is that how do you make another character that is similar to Jaeger, but not Jaeger 2.0. I imagine this is the reason why we haven't got anything like this. Right now, if you want to deal with nades, you have to play as Jaeger. There's no other option, but how else do they create an operator that is similar to that? you may have just stumbled upon it. Now, of course, they wouldn't be able to deal with all of the other nades that offense has available to them, but one tactic that's very strong right now is that offense clears out the Jaeger devices with all of their flashbangs, for example. They smoke off the objective, they run on in with a Monty, or they just run on in and plant the objective. The smoke screen completely blocks their line of sight for the defenders. This is the reason why on maps in basement on Oregon, for example, this tactic is really viable. And then somehow defense needs to get on in there and stop the plants. That can be really, really difficult if you don't have a well-coordinated team or the exact operators to deal with that tactic. Well, what if there was a new operator that could counter that entirely? You throw in some sort of gadget, it neutralizes the smoke somehow. I mean, we've got futuristic operators. This isn't too much of a stretch. The smoke disappears almost immediately, and now that person who is trying to plant the diffuser is all out in the open and hopefully can take them down. That could be really, really strong. The one big issue I have with this idea, though, is that this is a very specific counter to a certain strategy. This guy only deals with smoke, and so while yes, on some maps and on some objectives, this guy would be very viable. Like, I can absolutely see this being someone that people would use on those objectives. But a lot of times, because it is so specific on basically every other map and every other objective, this character is probably not going to see a whole lot of use. I would think that they would need to provide something else to the table. I'm just not sure what else their gadget would be able to provide. And so while I really like this idea conceptually, I think it is too specific for that strategy. Maybe if they were able to expand upon it somehow, maybe it neutralized something else for the offensive team. I'm not really sure what else it would be able to neutralize. Like, the idea is there, I just think that it needs to be expanded upon somehow for this to ever be introduced into Rainbow Six Siege. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Are you happy with the direction that Ubisoft is taking with the Dropshotting nerf? Are you a bit disappointed? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.